You felt the shift, didn't you? One day he was all in, texting first, initiating plans, complimenting you without needing a reason. And now, it's silence, distance, confusion. His energy changed, and you're stuck, analyzing every moment, replaying every conversation, wondering, was it something I said? Did I come on too strong? Should I pull away too? Let's get one thing straight. A man who suddenly distances himself isn't always confused. Sometimes he's counting on you to be. Because when a man pulls back, most women panic. They chase, they question their worth, they try harder, and that's exactly what pushes him even further away. But what if you didn't do that this time? What if you responded with emotional power instead of panic? What if you shifted your energy first, without needing a single word from him? This isn't about playing it cool. It's about knowing your value so deeply that someone else's inconsistency doesn't shake your identity. In this video, I'm going to show you what most women never do when a man goes distant, and how you can do the exact opposite. Not to win him back, but to win yourself back. Because the moment you stop chasing clarity from him, you create space for it within yourself. And that shift, that's when everything changes. If you're tired of feeling like an emotional yo-yo in someone else's story, stay with me. You're not just about to learn what to do when he pulls away. You're about to learn how to never lose your power again. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the mental gymnastics you've probably been doing. He went quiet, he stopped texting back, the connection feels off, and your brain instantly starts spinning with possibilities. Is he mad at me? Did I say something wrong? Should I double text? Maybe he didn't see it. But here's what you need to understand. First, a man's silence often says more about him than it ever will about you. And once you understand the psychology behind this behavior, you'll stop personalizing the distance and start regaining your emotional balance. So why does a man ignore you? Sometimes it's avoidant behavior. When things start to feel too emotional, too vulnerable, or too real, he withdraws to protect himself. He may fear intimacy, fear being consumed, or just fear the responsibility that closeness requires. Other times it's about power, not in a malicious way, but subconsciously. Some men pull back to see how much control they still have. Will you reach out again? Will you chase? Will you fold into anxiety? That tells him how invested you are, and how little he has to do to keep you on the hook. There's also emotional immaturity. Some men simply lack the tools to communicate discomfort, disinterest, or confusion. So instead of being honest, they disappear. They avoid the awkward conversation. They leave you to fill in the blanks. It's not kind, but it's common. And here's something you may not want to hear. Sometimes he's just not feeling it anymore. And instead of offering you the dignity of clarity, he chooses the path of least resistance, silence. Ignoring you becomes his exit strategy. Now here's where most women get it wrong. They take it personally. They assume it's their fault. They try to fix it. But trying harder in response to someone doing less never leads to peace. It leads to emotional exhaustion. The truth is, when a man ignores you, it's often because he's making space for himself, for someone else, or simply because he can. And how you respond to that space defines your power. Do you fill it with chasing, guessing, over-explaining? Or do you protect your peace and let him sit in the silence he created? You don't have to force connection where there's now distance. You don't have to fight for clarity from someone who won't even offer you basic respect. Once you stop needing answers from him, you start giving yourself something far more powerful, closure without contact. That's where your strength begins. So if you're still wondering why he's ignoring you, ask yourself a better question. Why am I still giving emotional energy to someone who doesn't value mine? Because when you stop feeding the silence with worry, you start feeding yourself with truth. And that truth, it will set you free. When a man pulls away, the first instinct for most women is to close the gap. It's human. You felt connected. You were building something, or at least it felt like you were. So when the distance creeps in, you scramble to fix it. But here's the hard truth. It's in this exact moment of panic that most women unknowingly sabotage themselves. Let's talk about the common mistakes, because once you see them, you can stop repeating them. The first mistake, over-communication. You double text, then triple. You send long paragraphs trying to explain how you feel or what you need from him. You ask questions like, Did I do something wrong, or are we okay? But here's the thing. A man who's distancing himself already knows he's pulling away. Flooding him with more communication doesn't pull him closer. It just reminds him he wants space. The second mistake, chasing with your energy. Even if you don't reach out, he can feel when you're emotionally gripping. You watch his stories, obsess over his replies, hope every notification is him. That unspoken energy can be felt, and it repels instead of attracts. Mistake number 3, changing yourself to win him back. Suddenly you start acting cooler, more agreeable, more available. You bend your boundaries hoping he'll stay. But here's the thing, the moment you betray yourself to keep someone else, you lose either way. Because even if he stays, he's staying for a version of you that's not real. Another painful mistake, seeking external validation. You vent to friends who don't understand emotional dynamics. You stalk his socials, trying to decode if he's interested in someone else. You might even post things hoping he'll see and respond. This just keeps you stuck in reaction mode, and you deserve more than that. And maybe the most damaging mistake, making his silence mean something about your worth. You internalize the distance as rejection. You start believing you're not enough, not pretty enough, not interesting enough. But his withdrawal is not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of his alignment, his clarity, or his emotional maturity. The truth is, when a man pulls back, the worst thing you can do is abandon yourself in the process, because that's the real heartbreak, not losing him, but losing you. What should you do instead? Pause, observe. Don't react from fear, respond from self-respect. This isn't the time to convince someone to choose you. It's the time to choose yourself so fully that whether he stays or goes, your peace remains untouched. You're not here to chase someone into clarity. You're here to become so grounded in your own energy that anyone unsure about you simply filters themselves out. And that's how you stop making the same mistakes and start standing in your worth. Let's get honest, chasing a man, whether through words, effort, or energy, never feels good. You tell yourself you're just trying to fix things. You think if you just explain how you feel, maybe he'll understand. If you show him your loyalty, your care, your patience, maybe he'll come around. But let me be very clear. The more you chase, the more he emotionally checks out. And not because you're not worthy, but because chasing sends one loud, unspoken message. My worth depends on your response. Men, especially emotionally avoidant men, pull away from anything that feels like pressure. When you start over-investing in someone who's already under-responding, you break the energy balance. You go from high value to high anxiety, and he feels it. What happens next? He withdraws even more. You panic, you chase harder, and suddenly, your entire emotional state revolves around getting a reaction from someone who's not even showing up for you. But here's what changes everything. Less is more. When you stop chasing, when you give space, you do something powerful. You allow his energy to come toward you. You stop over-functioning. You stop doing the emotional labor. You stop trying to prove your value, and start showing that you already know it. Here's the truth that most women miss. Pulling back isn't about playing games. It's about breaking the cycle. When you lean back, you're not being cold, you're being clear. You're showing that love doesn't mean losing yourself in pursuit of someone else. You're showing that if he needs space, you'll give it. But not because you're waiting on him, because you have you to return to. Less contact, less explaining, less begging for clarity, more silence, more self-reflection, more redirecting your focus back to your own life. Because when you stop chasing, you create contrast, you shift the dynamic, you disrupt the pattern. And in that space, one of two things will happen. Either he realizes what he's losing and steps up, or you realize what you were holding on to wasn't worth the emotional cost. Either way, you win. So if you're in that messy middle right now, feeling confused, tempted to reach out, desperate for closure, pause. Don't chase him. Chase your peace. Because the woman who stops chasing becomes the woman who is chosen, not by someone else, but by herself first. And once you choose you, no man who isn't ready for real connection will ever feel like a loss again. Let your energy speak louder than your effort. Less is more, always. Emotional detachment isn't cold. It's not shutting down. It's not pretending you don't care. When deep down, you're hurting. That's emotional suppression, not detachment. True detachment is calm, clear, grounded. It looks like choosing peace over proving a point. It's when your entire body stops vibrating with anxiety every time your phone lights up. It's when you no longer wait for a message that never comes to validate whether you matter. It's not indifference, it's acceptance. And that distinction matters. Because what hurts the most isn't just missing someone, it's resisting the truth about what their behavior already showed you. When you're emotionally attached, you interpret everything through the lens of maybe he's just busy. Maybe he needs space. Maybe if I do this differently, he'll come back. That's not love. It's fear. It's the fear of being alone, unchosen, forgotten. Emotional detachment happens the moment you stop negotiating with reality. It's when you see things as they are, not as you wish they could be. Not with bitterness, not with desperation, but with clarity. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's the quiet decision to stop checking his social media, not out of revenge, but because your mind deserves rest. It's leaving his name out of every conversation because you don't want him living rent-free in your energy anymore. It's not about deleting him to get a reaction. It's about clearing space to heal. Real detachment shows up in your inner dialogue. It's when you stop blaming yourself for his distance. It's when you say, I don't understand why he pulled away, but I trust that I don't need to chase that answer anymore. You're no longer trying to fix what's not yours to fix. You stop believing love should be earned through effort and sacrifice. You stop reaching out just to soothe your own discomfort, because you realize that peace isn't found in someone else. It's something you build from within. People think emotional detachment is hard, and it is. But not because it's unnatural. It's hard because letting go of fantasy is painful. You're not just grieving him. You're grieving the story you created around him. The version of him that maybe only existed in your heart. But once that grief passes, something powerful takes its place. Emotional freedom. You wake up lighter. You stop scanning your days for signs from him. You start anchoring into yourself again. Your routines, your passions, your friendships. And in that stillness, in that return, you realize he was never your source of love. He was only a mirror for where you were still searching. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you never cared. It means you finally care enough about yourself to stop clinging to someone who won't meet you in the middle. And that, quietly, is where your healing begins. When the energy shifts and you feel like you're the one doing all the emotional heavy lifting, it's easy to start wondering how things got so one-sided. Maybe at the beginning he pursued you. He made the effort, checked in, kept the connection warm, but now you're left second-guessing everything, trying to recapture a dynamic that once felt effortless. Reversing the power imbalance isn't about tricks. It's not about playing hard to get, ignoring texts on purpose, or mimicking detachment to make him chase. That might work in the short term, but it's exhausting, and you're smarter than that. The real shift begins with your energy. When you move out of performance mode, where you're trying to say or do the right thing to pull him closer, and step back into alignment with your own emotional center, the entire dynamic recalibrates. He can feel it, even without words. Most women think that regaining control means making him miss you, or teaching him a lesson. But that only keeps the focus on him. What actually changes the dynamic is when your attention shifts back to you, not out of revenge, but out of remembrance. You remember who you were before you started doubting yourself in this connection. Before you began trying to earn love instead of simply being loved for who you are. That energy is magnetic, not because it's manipulative, but because it's rare. He may not respond immediately. He might even pull away more when you stop overextending. That's okay. It's supposed to create space for you to breathe, reflect, and get honest about whether his presence in your life has truly been adding value, or just consuming your emotional bandwidth. You don't need to confront him or prove anything. Sometimes the most powerful shift happens in silence. You simply start responding less, reaching out less, offering less of yourself to someone who isn't showing up fully. Not because you're withholding, but because you're no longer leaking energy where it's not being reciprocated. And here's what often happens. The moment you stop trying to win him, you start to win yourself. You become more grounded, more selective, more secure. You move from being reactive to being centered. That shift changes everything. Men are drawn to women who are connected to themselves, Not the kind of connection that screams independence for show, but the quiet confidence of someone who knows she is enough, with or without him. Reversing the power dynamic isn't about regaining control over him. It's about releasing the idea that you ever needed to. It's not about making him chase. It's about no longer chasing someone who should have met you where you were all along. And once you're in that space, you'll stop craving his validation, because you've already reclaimed your own. His silence can feel like a scream. You check your phone. Nothing. You replay every recent interaction, wondering, did I do something wrong? Did the vibe shift? You fight the urge to text first, to break the silence, to get some form of response that soothes your uncertainty. But before you reach out, pause, because how you respond to his silence has the power to shape not just the relationship, but your sense of self. Here's what to do, step by step, when he goes quiet. Step 1, stop filling in the blanks. His silence doesn't always mean rejection. Sometimes it's immaturity, sometimes it's emotional avoidance, and sometimes it's just a test of your reaction. But if you start overthinking and assigning meaning to every hour of no contact, you give his silence more power than it deserves. Your first job is to detach from the need for immediate clarity. You don't need all the answers right now. Step 2, match the energy without the attitude. If he goes silent, you don't chase. Not because you're being petty, but because you're not desperate. You simply lean back. If he wants to pull away, he's free to, but your response won't be panic. You stay grounded. You stay calm. You stay focused on your life. Step 3, redirect your focus immediately. Silence can create a mental vacuum, one you fill with anxiety. So disrupt that cycle. Go out with friends. Start a new podcast. Hit the gym. Do something that reminds you of your own wholeness. You're not sitting around waiting for a ping from someone who hasn't earned your peace of mind. Step 4, give it a clear time frame. Silence isn't a strategy, it's information. If someone disappears without explanation for days and doesn't respect your emotional space, you don't wait forever. Give it a window. 3 days, fine. A week, you reassess. But anything beyond that, without genuine effort, is not distance. It's disregard. Step 5, when you do speak, speak from self-worth. If he eventually texts back or reappears, don't pretend like nothing happened. You don't need to yell, accuse, or beg. You just stay honest. Hey, when I don't hear from you like that, it doesn't sit right with me. I value clear connection. If we're not aligned on that, it's okay. But I won't stay confused. That right there, that's high value energy. You're not playing cool, you're being clear. And clarity is what repels the inconsistent and attracts the right energy. Remember, if silence is his choice, peace is yours. You don't fight for attention. You don't audition for someone to care. You hold space for someone who shows up with consistency, not crumbs. Let him wonder how you stayed so calm, because when he goes silent, your power move is not chasing noise. There's a moment quiet but powerful, when you realize you've been pouring so much energy into someone else that you've disconnected from your own light. You've dimmed your sparkle for someone who barely notices it anymore. And in that silence, in that ache, you wonder where you went. But here's the truth. Your inner magnetism was never lost. It was buried beneath self-doubt, overthinking, and emotional labor that was never yours to carry. You don't need to find it, you just need to return to it. Magnetism isn't about being liked. It's not about being the most beautiful or impressive woman in the room. It's about energy, presence, that rare, radiant sense of self that says, I'm not here to prove, I'm here to live. To rebuild that kind of magnetism, you start with something subtle but profound, pulling your power back inward. Not with anger, not with games, but with intention. You stop leaking energy into thoughts of him, what he's doing, why he's silent, whether he's missing you. Instead, you start noticing the spaces you've abandoned in yourself, the dreams you delayed, the softness you dulled, the boundaries you stretched, and you begin to reclaim them, piece by piece. Magnetism grows when your attention is no longer glued to someone else's approval, but tuned into your own needs, desires, and joy. It shows up in the way you speak kindly to yourself in the mirror, in the way you protect your peace, in the way you choose people who feel safe, not just exciting. When you show up for yourself consistently, your frequency changes. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. That's the power of real, embodied confidence. It's quiet but undeniable. And if you're wondering whether this shift will make him notice, here's the beautiful irony. Men are most drawn to the version of you that's least focused on him, because suddenly you're not trying to win him back. You're not waiting. You're not performing. You're simply being, and in that being, you become magnetic. Not just to him, but to everything meant for you. The version of you that blossoms in this space is the one who remembers her worth without needing it reflected back. She walks into rooms without shrinking. She doesn't chase clarity. She creates it. She doesn't demand love. She attracts it through the frequency of her self-honoring choices. You don't rebuild magnetism through external validation. You rebuild it by making your own energy so rich, so rooted, so real, that being ignored no longer unravels you. So if you're asking how to get that spark back, the one you had before him, the answer is simple but deep. Come back to yourself. Love her more loudly than you ever loved anyone who made you question your value. That's the beginning of everything. There's a moment when you stop waiting. Not because you no longer care, but because you finally understand your power doesn't live in someone else's return. It lives in your ability to stand tall, even if they never look back. Staying in your power doesn't mean you don't still miss him sometimes. It doesn't mean the silence doesn't sting, or that you've erased every memory. What it does mean is that his absence no longer defines your worth. This is the shift. When you stop wondering if you were enough and start asking a different question. Was he ever capable of giving you the love you truly deserve? Staying in your power means refusing to beg for clarity from someone who gave you confusion. It means honoring your standards, even if it means walking alone for a while. It means choosing peace over chaos again and again. You may have spent weeks or months trying to make sense of the distance, replaying what you said, analyzing every message, searching for closure. But here's the truth. The real closure doesn't come from him. It comes from you. From deciding that the unanswered questions no longer need to be answered for you to move forward. Power looks like returning to yourself, rebuilding your energy, not in rebellion, but in rebirth. It's finding beauty in your own rhythm again. It's showing up to your life fully, not halfway, not paused, not waiting. Even if he never reaches out again, even if the door never opens, you don't need that door. You've outgrown it. Your power is in the way you speak to yourself now. How you remind yourself daily that you are more than someone's indecision, that love should never leave you guessing, that your softness is sacred, but so is your strength. So maybe he won't come back. Maybe he already made that decision in his silence. But here you are, still breathing, still healing, still standing. And that's not weakness, that's resilience. The most powerful thing you can do now isn't to prove him wrong. It's to rise without needing to be seen by him at all. It's to become so aligned with your own value that his absence feels like a chapter that no longer fits the story you're writing, because you're no longer trying to be chosen. You've chosen yourself. This version of you doesn't chase. She attracts. She protects her peace. She doesn't collapse at the memory of someone who walked away. She rebuilds her life around what still remains. And what remains is everything. Your power, your clarity, your growth, your voice. So if he never comes back, let that be okay. Because the woman you're becoming, she doesn't need him to come back to be whole. She already is.